Are we living on the edge of a possible World War III? The vulnerable positions in the Middle East tell us so, and there's one key player that can't be stopped from adding fuel to a very hungry fire. Iran, beating all odds once again, has launched a sophisticated missile system, and it has already unleashed it on its bitterest rival, Israel.
The fastest by far and the most dangerous.
Join us as we break down how the United States was left shocked by Iran's $70 billion missile. The terrifying situation in the Middle East. Iran's obsession with building a strong military arsenal ties back to its bitter rivalry with the United States and Israel that in turn emerges from the bitterest conflict in the Middle East. The conflict between Israel and Palestine dates back to the early 1900s, beginning with tensions between Jewish and Arab communities in British-controlled Palestine. After World War II and the Holocaust, there was a strong international push for a Jewish homeland, which led to the creation of Israel in 1948. This sparked regional conflict as nearby Arab countries opposed Israel's formation, leading to multiple wars and the displacement of many Palestinians. Over the years, Israel expanded control over areas like the West Bank and Gaza, which Palestinians view as essential for their own future state. Iran has long supported Palestinian groups, providing money, weapons, and political backing as part of its opposition to Israel. Meanwhile, the United States has stood firmly with Israel, considering it a crucial ally in the region. This relationship has led the United States to supply Israel with military aid, even as peace efforts have repeatedly stumbled due to long-standing tensions. The most important party in this conflict is Hamas, a group that claims to speak for the Palestinian resistance. While Hamas has a strong backing from Iran, both the United States and Israel call it a terrorist organization, citing its history of brutal attacks in the region. Since then, Israel and Hamas-led Palestine have engaged in brutal clashes, something that turned into a raging war after the events of October 7, 2023, when Hamas launched the deadliest attack on Israel up to date. Experts claim that if the important stakeholders, such as Iran, Israel, and the United States, remain engaged in clashes, we might be seeing the rise of a new hot war, and this time, even the mightiest would have to endure great losses. Historically, the countries in the Middle East have fallen prey to the technological powers of the West, with the United States and Israel spending billions of dollars to protect their defensive and offensive mechanisms. However, with Iran's recent clashes with Israel, there's a new dawn emerging. Iran's rapid military innovation. Despite living under a harsh regime of sanctions and trade blocs, Tehran is building its missile systems rapidly, and by the looks of it, the Iranian army isn't hesitating from showing the West what it can do from the comfort of its military base. If this game was about an obvious pitting, we know that Iran's military capacities can't exactly rival the United States. Yet don't forget, Iran isn't alone in this brutal ploy. With China and Russia on its side, the Islamic regime is constantly adding fuel to the fire, and with its efficient hypersonic missiles in store, it can incur more damage than one can realize. It is perhaps the safest bet that Iran is yet to achieve full nuclear capacities. Otherwise, we might have just witnessed the repeat of the events from 1945 when America dropped a nuclear bomb on Hiroshima, Japan, marking the first and only use of the heinous bomb in our history. While that is a far-fetched reality for Iran now, the status quo is far more grim. As things are today, Iran is constantly improving and upgrading its arsenal to challenge its traditional rivals. And the United States can do very little to stop the Islamic regime from pushing its boundaries. The explanation for this is quite simple. Iran within its country is sovereign to build self-defense as long as it adheres to international laws and treaties. Even if that's not a consideration, you should know that Iran is a mastermind of plotting behind the curtains. Most information we get about its military is through satellite photos, which are rare and can often be misleading. Yet when it came down to Iran's hypersonic missile plans, there was no intelligence provided by either the United States or any of its allies. Quite simply so, Iran unveiled this weapon of destruction itself for the world to see. The launch ceremony and the decisive press release that followed was a very stark message for the world to see. Iran is becoming an important player in the world of strong militaries, and it is not to be bothered by its traditional rivals. However, Iran's hefty hypersonic missile isn't a prop. So far, the regime has used its full capacities against its row with Israel, and once you get to know about the powers of Fattah 1, you'd tremble too. As Iran flaunts its billion-dollar military milestone, Washington is a step back, and well, this sort of anomaly isn't without its consequences. Iran's announcement came at a critical time. On November 10, 2022, during the 11th anniversary of the death of Hassan Tehrani Moghadam, often called the father of Iranian missiles, Iran revealed it had developed an advanced hypersonic ballistic missile, a weapon of unprecedented speed, calling it a major generational leap. Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force, stated that this missile was incredibly fast and could maneuver both below and above the Earth's atmosphere. He claimed that it was capable of breaking through all existing anti-missile defense systems and suggested it could be decades before technology capable of intercepting it might be developed. Believe it or not, it took Iran less than a year to unveil this technology. In June 2023, Iran joined the exclusive group of countries possessing hypersonic weapons during a period marked by major political and military shifts. First things first, there were reports that Iran wanted to secretly kickstart its nuclear program before countries like the United States or its allies would catch on to its plans. The nuclear deal Iran signed with world powers in 2015 remained in limbo, though still technically in effect. Meanwhile, the United Nations resolution supporting the deal was set to lift some restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile development on October 2023. Not to mention, Iran's eyes were set on Ukraine, another hotspot in Europe where Russia is still awaiting a decisive victory. The Western support of Ukraine meant that the battle became increasingly hard for Moscow, which is allegedly desperate for military collaborations. And well, in this time of need, Iran offered swift support to its biggest ally. Western powers continued to voice concern over the strengthening military alliance between Tehran and Moscow. But Iran didn't exactly pay attention to any strongly worded warnings. Iran faced accusations of supplying Russia with attack drones for its conflict in Ukraine, though Iranian officials denied these claims, fearing any retaliation from the United States. Additionally, reports were suggesting that Russia was interested in purchasing Iranian missiles, though no final agreement had been confirmed. Iran, on the other hand, expressed interest in acquiring advanced Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets from Russia. In regional affairs, a peace deal brokered by China between Iran and Saudi Arabia paved the way for a wave of diplomatic activity. Tehran reopened its embassy in Riyadh, and Saudi Arabia was expected to reciprocate soon. This alone was a big blow to the United States, which has enjoyed a cordial relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Not to mention, Washington has desperately tried to keep the Chinese influence minimal in the Middle East, but Beijing has its own ways. As one might be able to gauge, on the diplomatic front, Iran wasn't doing too badly. Back then, it had two superpowers of the world playing in its backyard, and well, that was the confidence it really needed to make a shocking announcement to the world. It was going to unveil the Fattah 1. Why is Fattah 1 so important for Iran? In June 2023, it showcased a hypersonic ballistic missile it claimed could bypass defense systems, sparking further unease in the West and Israel. Hypersonic missiles like the Fattah travel at speeds of at least Mach 5, or 5 times the speed of sound, roughly 1.7 kilometers per second, or 6,174 kilometers per hour. A few months after the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps initially announced the hypersonic missile in November, the Fattah made its public debut. According to Iranian reports, the Fattah had a range of 1,400 kilometers and could reach speeds up to Mach 15, or around 5.1 kilometers per second, before striking its target. The Fattah 1 missile boasts a theoretical accuracy within a range of tens of meters. Iran's top-tier ballistic missiles have a circular error probable of around 20 meters. This means that statistically, half of the missiles aimed at a target should land within 20 meters of it, reflecting a high level of precision for ballistic weaponry. As per some experts, this particular metric makes the Iranian hypersonic missile theoretically better than some missiles in the American arsenal. Its design included a movable secondary nozzle and solid propellants, enabling the missile to maneuver within and beyond the atmosphere, which, according to top Iranian commanders, rendered it nearly impossible for any missile defense system worldwide to counter. Iranian leaders hailed this development as a generational leap in missile technology, emphasizing that the Fattah represented a new level of deterrence for the country. In response to Western skepticism regarding Iran's hypersonic capabilities, officials asserted that the truth would become clear on the day such technology might be deployed, claiming that the United States cast doubt on the missile's advancement because it threatened American arms sales in the region. Although some ballistic missiles can reach similar speeds, the Fattah introduced a new level of complexity. Upon re-entering the atmosphere, the missile could take unpredictable paths toward its target, making it challenging for radar systems to detect or for defense shields to intercept. This unpredictable trajectory, combined with friction-generated high temperatures and superheated particles around the missile, hindered radar detection and disrupted radio communications. To date, Russia and China have unveiled various hypersonic weapons, with Russia reportedly being the only country to have tested them in combat. The United States had also tested hypersonic missiles, though it appeared to be slightly behind its two main competitors. Could this be the start of another arms race for the United States, just like the Cold War? The answer lies in Iran's plans. When Iran showed off its newest missile, it kept its words about Israel more measured than in past unveilings, although the message seemed clear enough. The Fattah's range wasn't quite enough to reach from Tehran to Tel Aviv, but the head of Iran's aerospace division, Amir Ali Hajizadeh, hinted they might soon develop hypersonic missiles with a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. For years, Iran had kept its missile range capped at this limit to ease concerns in the West, especially in Europe, over how far these missiles could reach. At the speeds Iran claimed for the Fattah, it could hit targets in Israel in under 7 minutes. That wouldn't leave much time for detection or interception, even with Israel's Iron Dome defense system. Israeli news outlets honed in on earlier reports from Iranian media claiming one of Iran's hypersonic missiles could reach Israel in just 400 seconds. The United States didn't directly respond to the hypersonic missile reveal, but National Security Council official John Kirby made it clear the Biden administration wasn't easing up on what they saw as Iran's destabilizing activities, including its growing missile program. In response to the unveiling, the United States also rolled out new sanctions on Tehran, this time aimed squarely at Iran's ballistic missile program. Imposing sanctions is the United States' go-to strategy to curb whatever Tehran is playing about. And as you can also imagine, at this point, Iran continues to build its arsenal, even when it has very limited options for exports and imports. This is why, months after revealing Fattah 1 to the world, Iran unveiled an upgraded version of the missile, and if the United States hadn't panicked before, it definitely was that time. The next move. But to unveil it, Iran was waiting for the right moment to instill fear in its enemies. After debating on the date for a while, there was one historical event that accelerated the timeline for Iran. As you might have guessed, the country was in geopolitical turmoil following Hamas's attack on Israel. The events of October 2023 pushed the Islamic regime to protect its country, especially when it had principally supported certain Hamas leaders against the government of Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. The regional conflict escalated when Hamas-led militant groups launched an unexpected assault on Israel on October 7th, with a barrage of rockets and several thousand militants breaching the Gaza-Israel barrier to attack Israeli civilian communities and military bases. In this assault, 1,195 people, including 815 civilians, lost their lives, comprising both Israelis and foreign nationals. Additionally, 251 Israelis and foreigners were taken hostage and transported to Gaza, reportedly to pressure Israel to release Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Hamas stated that this attack was in retaliation for for what it described as Israel's ongoing occupation, the blockade of Gaza, settlement expansion, alleged disregard for international law, threats to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the broader hardships facing Palestinians. In contrast, Israel had once again reiterated Hamas's position as a terrorist organization that is causing bloodshed in both Palestine and Israel. As per the Israeli government, Hamas isn't the official spokesperson of Palestinians, and historically has murdered and kidnapped innocent Israeli citizens for extortion and terror. Not to mention, Israel has also targeted Hamas for using the plight of Palestine to smuggle weapons and arms to topple the country. The October 7th attack for the Israeli government was the last straw. Since then, Israel has claimed to act in self-defense. Following the clearing of militants from its territories, Israel launched a highly destructive bombing campaign in Gaza, and on October 27th initiated a ground invasion with the declared aims of dismantling Hamas and securing the release of hostages. Following Israel's announcements, Iran took a very clear-cut pro-Palestine stance on the situation. And well, when you become a party to a fire that has been raging on for decades, you must put your money where your mouth is. This is why, in the days following, Iran launched an upgraded version of the Fattah 1 to once again ward off its enemies. An upgraded Fattah hypersonic missile. In November 2023, Iran showed off an upgraded version of its hypersonic missile during a military exhibition that the country's supreme leader attended. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei visited an aerospace university in Tehran, which is operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. There, the advanced Fattah hypersonic missile took center stage, displayed alongside other Iranian-made weapons, like the Gaza drone. They also revealed an updated version of the Shahed unmanned aerial vehicle series and an improved model of the 9-day missile defense system, which is designed for firing short to medium-range projectiles. During the exhibition, Khamenei took the opportunity to speak out against Israel and its Western allies over the ongoing war in Gaza, a conflict that has led to the loss of lives of more than 12,000 Palestinians, nearly half of whom were children. He labeled Israel as a symbol of racism and criticized Western nations for backing the Gaza bombardment, saying that Western leaders also believe in racism. In addition to showcasing the Fattah, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps presented a new missile defense system called Mehran, which reportedly uses solid fuel missiles. Khamenei went further, condemning Israel for attacks on hospitals in Gaza, which he claimed showed Israel's frustration over its failure to overcome Palestinian fighters. He called on Muslim-majority governments to suspend political ties with Israel temporarily and urged Muslim countries to stop supplying energy and trade to Israel. Iran's display of military strength came as the United States increased its presence in the region, deploying 2 carrier strike groups and a nuclear submarine. At the same time, groups aligned with Iran, like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen, they had engaged in cross-border skirmishes with Israel to show solidarity with Hamas. In response, Israel alleged that the Houthis had seized a British-owned, Japanese-operated cargo ship in the southern Red Sea, labeling it an Iranian act of terrorism. Now you can perhaps understand why Iran's second big announcement came at a very critical point. After Iran's announcement, there was a frenzy online. Many experts claimed that Fattah was just like other conventional missiles that Iran had previously developed. At the same time, many experts warned against taking the system lightly. Upon a closer look at the hypersonic missile, it seems like Iran is perhaps not exaggerating its capacities. Iran's obsession with ballistic missiles. To be fair, when you're surrounded by the behemoth of military powers geographically, you'd also want to invest billions of dollars to build a credible defense. That's exactly what Iran has been doing, often at the expense of fulfilling the basic rights of its citizens. It doesn't matter if Iran is going through an economic and food crisis at its home. Today, a common Iranian citizen is facing the brunt of American sanctions as businesses and travel opportunities are limited in the country. Under the Islamic regime, people are forced to observe strict religious laws, all amid a chronic economic crisis. Its defense ministry would continue to rake dollars into enhancing its capacities, and that's precisely the essence of its ballistic missile system. Iran's journey into the missile world started long before the Islamic Revolution. Back in the day, even the Shah, Iran's pro-America leader, was interested in building up Iran's ballistic missile power. After Washington refused to sell him Lance missiles, he decided to work with Israel to develop a short-range system. They called it Project Flower. Iran funded the project, while Israel provided the technical know-how. Around that time, Iran also got into nuclear tech, possibly to explore long-range options for nuclear delivery. But when the revolution came along, both programs collapsed as the new Iranian government was effectively against Israel. In those years under the Shah, Iran boasted the largest air force in the Gulf, with over 400 combat aircraft. But after cutting ties with the West, in the light of the anti-United States Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran faced a serious setback. The rise of Khamenei regime effectively replaced Shah's pro-West rule. Losing access to spare parts, training, and weaponry meant its once powerful air force started to weaken quickly. When Iraq invaded in 1980, Tehran saw missiles as a quick fix for this problem. They sourced Soviet-made Scud-B missiles, first from Libya, then Syria and North Korea. From 1985 until the war's end in 1988, Iran used these Scuds against Iraq. Once the war was over, Iran took a new direction, expanding its missile arsenal and working to build a self-reliant industry. They invested in homegrown production to limit dependence on other countries, even though they still had to import some essential components. Iran also got better at extending the range of its missiles, especially after acquiring North Korea's Nodong missiles, which they then rebranded and customized. Today, Iran's missiles can reach just about anywhere in the Middle East, including Israel. Over time, Iran has built a missile program that serves a wide range of strategic goals. It's been a steady evolution, but Iran now has a missile arsenal that lets it respond to threats across the region. The Fattah missile isn't the only notable addition to its lethal military arsenal. Iran's ever-expanding arsenal. Before Iran got obsessed with hypersonic missiles, it was investing its money into technologies that were innovative for their time. Plus, Iran's trajectory to build its missiles is tainted heavily by the brutal regime of sanctions. While the options have been very limited for the country, it hasn't ever stopped the Islamic regime from sending seismic waves to the world of military technological evolution. Since the late 1980s, Iran has been buying short and medium-range missiles from other countries, then tweaking them to fit its needs. The Shahab missiles, named after the Persian word for meteors, were at the heart of Iran's missile program for a long time. These missiles run on liquid fuel as opposed to hydrogen fuel, which means they take more time to launch, but the technology worked pretty well. The Shahab-1, which is based on the Soviet Union's Scud-B missile, has a range of around 300 kilometers, or about 185 miles. Next up is the Shahab-2, based on the Scud-C, with a range of about 500 kilometers, or about 310 miles. Iran is believed to have between 200 and 300 Shahab-1 and Shahab-2 missiles, which can hit targets in neighboring countries. Iran has also converted a lot of its Shahab-2 missiles into Qiyam missiles. The Qiyam has a detachable warhead, which makes it harder for enemy missile defense systems to take it out. There's also a second version of the Qiyam that's equipped with a warhead that can maneuver during re-entry, making it more accurate. These missiles have a range of about 700 to 800 kilometers, or roughly 440 to 500 miles when carrying a warhead that weighs around 500 to 600 kilograms, or about 1,100 to 1,300 pounds. Iran has sold these Qiyam missiles to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who've used them to strike Saudi Arabia. Then there's the Shahab-3, which is based on North Korea's Nodong missile. This missile has a range of about 900 kilometers, or about 560 miles, and a payload of around 1,000 kilograms, or 2,200 pounds. A newer version of the Shahab-3, called the Ghadr-1, first flew in 2004. There are a few variations of the Ghadr-1, with each one being slightly improved for better reliability and ease of use. Most of Iran's Shahab-3 missiles have been modified into Ghadr missiles. The Ghadr-1 extends Iran's reach to about 1,600 kilometers, or about 1,000 miles, making it a medium-range missile. However, it carries a smaller warhead of around 750 kilograms, or about 1,650 pounds. In 2015, Iran tested the Ahmad, a modified version of the Ghadr missile. The key difference in the Ahmad is a new nose cone with small winglets near the base of the warhead. These winglets are likely there to help steer the warhead as it re-enters the atmosphere, improving its accuracy. While it's unclear if the Ahmad was fully turned into a precision-guided missile at that point, the changes made it clear that Iran was aiming for more precise capabilities. It's tough to pin down the Ahmad's exact range and payload, as we don't know much about the components that help steer the warhead during re-entry. The added weight from those components probably reduces the Ahmad's range and payload compared to the Ghadr, but exactly how much is still unclear. Still, it's likely that the Ahmad has a maximum range of less than 1,500 kilometers. There are several more sophisticated missiles in Iran's pockets, however, none of them is close to the power of Fattah 1 and 2. It wasn't surprising that the hypersonic missile system also became Iran's chosen weapon to attack Israel recently. Clashes between Israel and Iran. In July 2024, Israel carried out decisive strikes on Tehran, effectively taking out the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh. That alone was enough to rile Iran to use its hypersonic technology to cause damage to its biggest rival in the Middle East. Yet for some reason, Iran waited to respond, only for Israel to launch the biggest cyber attack on Tehran's other key ally in the region, Lebanon. Under Hezbollah, Lebanon has maintained diplomatic ties with Iran, so when the infamous pager attack in the country took the lives of hundreds, including Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the terrorist group, the world watched the hot region with a keen eye. And then, in early October 2024, the expected happened. Iran unleashed its military arsenal on Israel, reportedly causing ample damage to Tel Aviv's military infrastructure. Iran launched its biggest strike on Israel, firing 180 ballistic missiles late on a Tuesday night. Most of them were reportedly intercepted by the missile defense systems of Israel, the United States, and Jordan, according to officials from those countries. Experts who analyzed social media footage from the scene told American news reporters that Iran used variations of the Shahab-3 missile in this latest attack. Iranian media later reported that Tehran had fired a new missile, the Fattah 1, during the assault. Now, the term hypersonic is often tossed around when talking about weapons that can travel at incredibly fast speeds and maneuver within Earth's atmosphere, like hypersonic glide vehicles and cruise missiles. These weapons are known for being really tough to shoot down. But the Fattah 1 wasn't quite that advanced, according to Fabian Hinz, a research fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, who wrote about it last year. Hinz explained that the Fattah 1 had a warhead on what's called a maneuverable re-entry vehicle, allowing it to adjust its path during the final phase of its dive toward its target. While this capability was a step up from Iran's previous missiles, Hinz said it wasn't as advanced as some of the hypersonic weapons out there. The Shahab-3 missile had been the foundation for most of Iran's medium-range ballistic missiles. It runs on liquid propellant and first entered service in 2003. The Missile Threat Project mentioned that the Shahab-3's newer versions, like the Ghadr and Ahmad missiles, are accurate to within about 300 meters, or nearly 1,000 feet, of their targets. However, analysts were doubtful that Iran would have used one of these newer missiles in this particular attack. Trevor Ball, a former senior explosive ordnance technician for the United States Army, pointed out that using such a new missile could give Israel valuable insights into its capabilities. He said, "It's one of their newest ballistic missiles, and they have a lot to lose from using it." He went on to say that if the missile failed or didn't perform as expected, Israel could learn even more about its weaknesses, potentially giving them a leg up. They get free propaganda and risk nothing by saying it was used, he added. Like Ball, many other experts claimed that if Iran had used Fattah 1, perhaps it was a big tactical error. Yet, on the other hand, experts were also surprised at Tehran's bold moves. You see, you only invite danger when you know you can fight it off. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.